Come on down and have a cup of coffee and we'll catch up a little bit.
Sounds good. All right.
Thanks, Crystal. I'd appreciate it. That'd be fun.
All right. Bye, guys.
Students, we'd like to welcome you to our virtual career fair with Junior Achievement of Southern Colorado. We are so fortunate today to have Jeff Chostner with us. Jeff Chostner is the district attorney for the 10th Judicial District. Jeff, it's a pleasure to see you. He's also a retired Air Force colonel, and I'm sure that your time in the military will also play into some of the conversation you'll have with our students today about character building and character development. But we'd love for you to introduce yourselves to the students and tell us a little bit more about what you think they need to know about character building and character development as they think about their futures and their careers.
Thank you. I really appreciate the time to be with you all today. I think Junior Achievement is a terrific program, and I try and participate in these or similar activities frequently throughout the year. I just think they're a wonderful educational tool that's available to all the folks in the viewing audience. But in addition to it, not just the education of it, I think it's the substance of what they talk about. And today, we're going to talk a little bit about character building and things that can help you in your personal and perhaps your professional life as you get down the road a little bit. So I'm going to spend just a minute or two talking about me, which I don't particularly like to do. I'm going to talk about me to put some of these comments that I make in context so you know where I'm coming from. So I'm a Pueblo native. My family goes back to the 1870s here. I was born and raised here in Pueblo. I'm a graduate of Pueblo East High School. After I graduated from East, I went to the University of Colorado Boulder, where I got a double major in history and English, a minor in political science. I was in Air Force ROTC at CU. And then later I asked to go to law school, and the Air Force accommodated me. And so I went to the University of Mississippi Law School for a number of reasons. They had a good trial practice program there, and I was interested in trial practice. But also they had an ROTC detachment there, and they kind of wanted to keep an eye on me and make sure I did well in school and graduated before I went on active duty. So that all turned out well. I went on active duty and was in the military for about 22 years and did a variety of things. I was a JAG. Some of you may know that term, but a JAG is a military attorney. I did primarily trial work for my first 10 years. I was both a prosecutor and a defense counsel, trying courts martials. But I also worked in the Air Force on flying evaluation boards and discharge boards, and I would represent the Air Force at various hearings, utility board hearings and those kind of things, contract hearings, all that kind of things that keeps a military installation up and running and doing all the things it needs to, is basically a small city within a community. And then when I retired from the Air Force, I came back to Pueblo and entered into private law practice, which I carried on with for about 10 years, but I always had a political itch. And so early on in my retirement, so-called retirement, I ran for Pueblo City Council. I was on Pueblo City Council for 3 years. Then I ran for Pueblo County Commissioner. I was a Pueblo County Commissioner for 6 years. And then I ran for district attorney. I've served 8 full years, and I'm now in my 3rd term as district attorney. So if all goes well, I'll serve another approximately 4 years here as district attorney. So I only give that to you as somebody who has had some modicum of success in professional life, and how that translates into how I am personally into being successful in the things that you want to do in life. Mine has obviously been a military legal career and governmental career, but I think what I would talk about would apply to anything that you do in life. And I think there's a number of things to look at that I think would help you down the road. And a lot of it is nothing more than what your mom or dad would tell you, which is, one, be honest. You need to have honesty in your life, and you need to be truthful with the people that you deal with. If you're not truthful with people, frankly, you're really just kind of fooling yourself, because the lies that you tell will come back and get you. So I highly encourage, first and foremost, that you be truthful. That will build trusting relationships with friends and family and employers down the road. If they know you're trustworthy, that also means you're reliable. It means that you are honest in how you handle things, that they can trust you with responsibilities. And one story that I remember from when I was in the Air Force, when I was at ROTC or at basing training, is when we lived in the barracks, they put 4 of us to a room, and you had to fill out whether you got demerits or not. Demerits is if you did something wrong or didn't do it correctly. If you didn't make your bed right, if you didn't shine your shoes right, if your uniform wasn't right, if you didn't have your clothes folded right, all those little attention to detail things. And at the end of the week, you had to turn in how many demerits that you had earned. And the number of demerits you turned in had to be equal to the number of demerits they gave out. So they were really testing how honest you were. Well, I had a roommate that lied about his demerits. He didn't turn them all in. And if you had demerits, that took away free time on the weekend from you. He wanted some free time, and so he cheated on the demerits he turned in. Well, he got caught. And so they were going to kick him out of the boot camp for officers. Well, we knew this fella, and the other 3 of us went down to the commandant, and we said, would you please help Al out? It was a mistake, and we'll make sure he stays on track and he won't get in trouble again. And we just, as a buddy of his and the buddy system, we want to make sure that he'll do well. And the commandant told me something that I've remembered all these years. And I pass this on to you as a lesson too. He said, you know, Jeff, if he'd been involved in a fight, I can stop him from fighting. If he'd been involved in coming to work late, I can stop that. If he'd come in after hours, I could stop that. Even if he had an alcohol problem, was drinking too much, I can help and stop that. But he said, you know, in my whole career, I've never found that I could correct somebody from lying. That if they lie, that really affects who they are and that they have a tendency to lie again. And he said, I appreciate you guys coming down here. It's commendable that you wanted to help him as a buddy, but I'm not going to follow your recommendation or request because I just think I can't trust him. I said, what happens if he's working on a plane that's carrying nuclear weapons and he's got a checklist and it's too hard to do for him or something? If he's willing to cheat on something small like demerits, would he also cheat on something that's very important, like the flyability of a B-52 that's carrying nuclear weapons? So he didn't let him back in. He kicked him out of the camp. And that was a real lesson to me in how important honesty is. And the more I've thought about that over the years and now my experience in life, I think the commander was correct. I think it's very difficult to correct people and bring them in line if they have a propensity to lie. And I know in the law, one of the questions that judges will ask and lawyers will ask is if you've lied before, if you've lied under oath, if you perjured yourself, because people feel if you have lied once or twice, you have a history of it and that you can't be trustworthy in the testimony that you're going to give in court. So I don't mean to harp on that or go too long, but I really think honesty and how you conduct yourself is something that really defines who you are to the world. The second one I think is hard work and how diligent you'll be at work. You always want somebody who tries. And I know both when I was an employee for somebody else and with the employees I have now, I always give somebody A for effort. Even if they don't always get the right answer, if I know they're in there hustling and they're going to try and get the right answer and they're going to work hard, I always give people credit for that. I also think kind of watching what you say. One of the things my mom taught me is if you don't have anything good to say, don't say it at all. And that has really held me in good stead in political life. I may not like a person, I may not like their position, but I don't have to say that. I can show enough discipline to keep those thoughts to myself because I may have to work with that person. I may need that person later down the road on a particular issue or projects. If I've spoiled that by being so blunt as to tell somebody how I feel, what good did that do? I hurt his feelings, I damaged a relationship, and I'm not able to work with that person down the road. So, you know, we kind of live in a day and age where people think they have to say something all the time and whatever's on their mind, they have to get it off. I would encourage you to have a little restraint that your opinion is not always that valuable and it can be harmful. And I would recommend to you that you try and be a little circumspect in what you have to say. I think you'll find that will help you. The other thing I found too, when I was on Pueblo City Council, I didn't always speak on councilman comments. I knew a lot of my fellow politicians, they couldn't wait to say something. I found that because I didn't speak that often, when I did speak, it did command attention. They finally said, well, hey, Jeff has something to say. It must be important if he's waited to say something about it. So the impact of what you have to say could actually be better if you've waited to say it and not cluttered everything up with smaller observations. So I think that's important. With you folks in school, I think one of the attributes is to work hard in school and to learn as much as you can. One of the things I do with junior achievement and other activities is I talk about reading in school. And I can't tell you how important reading is. If you can read and you learn to read well, you can do anything, you can be anything. But the opposite is true too. If you don't learn to read, if you don't take the time to read and learn things, quite frankly, you're going to be very limited in what you can do. So I think one of the best things you can do in school today is learn to read. And reading is interesting. It's fun. I mean, you can travel anywhere and everywhere in a book, and use your imagination and visualize people and places. And it increases your interest in other things. And you'll find how all these disciplines come together. You may be reading, but you could be reading about biology or history or math. And the more you read, the more you'll figure out that all of these subjects are tied together in one way or another. They're all kind of related. So I would encourage you to work hard in school, to learn as much as you can, and really perfect reading. If you can get reading down, that makes everything so much easier. And if you can't read, it makes everything so much harder. So please learn to read. Stay at that. The other thing is be a good listener. Everybody wants to to speak and be heard, and that's important. Like I say, watch what you say and how you say it. But I think it's important to be a good listener, and I'm always having to watch myself on that, is to slow down and just take a deep breath and listen to what the other person says, because frequently what that person is saying is not what you think they're going to say. You already have a preconceived notion of what they're going to say. Why don't you sit back and just listen to what they actually are saying? And you might find, more often than not, it's a little different than what you thought they were going to say. And you'll find it more interesting. And you can reach out and, be more conversant with the person. You can learn more about the topic, and you can really define what the subject is you're talking about, not what you thought that person was going to say. Another thing is to be a good team player. I know here in my office, in all my offices that I've ever run, I've always really emphasized team play, because every team is stronger than its individual parts. It's that old mathematical equation, 1 + 1 = 3. If you have two of you working together, you're greater than just the one in one. You actually come out and you do more. We just did a very big case down here that made national news, and you may have seen or heard about it. And I had a trial team that worked together really for 4 years. But during the trial itself, on our conference table, when we would meet every morning, they had a phrase. It was an old Indian phrase. It came from the Indian chief Tecumseh. And it said, "One twig may be weak, but bound together they are strong." And we lifted each other up every day in that trial that was very, very intense. And there was a lot of emotion put into it. And us all being team players helped us to stick together and make it through those tough times. So I would encourage you, if you're part of a team, to be a player on that. Don't just think of yourself. Sacrifice some of your own ego to help the team. And there's nothing like success on a team. There really is not, because you create friendships and you create relationships. And at the end of the day, you get the job done better if you all help each other out. And that's another thing, is to help others. And I think you should do this in life, not just in school. You should always be looking for ways to help other people out. Sometimes you'll hear that phrase, well, I did something good for somebody. What did I get out of it? Well, it's nice if you're rewarded for a good act, but you know what? Just doing something good is its own reward. And haven't you ever had that feeling where, it's better to give than receive? Don't you always feel better if you do something nice for your friend, or even if it's somebody who's not even a friend, that you've just done something good? And yeah, you didn't get rewarded for it. Nobody gave you money or cash or gift or compliments, but you know you did it. And you just feel good about yourself because you did the right thing and you helped another human being out. So I always think it's good to help somebody else. Just stop and ask somebody how they are, how they're doing, how you can help them. In the course of school and your jobs, ask questions. I always say in my office, there's no stupid questions, and there really isn't. If I hear somebody that asks a question that may be a little humorous or laughable, I never laugh about it. I always say, oh, well, that's a good question. Let me help you with that. Here's something I can help. I don't want them embarrassed, and I don't want the people who are around them who are watching this to think I'm going to laugh if they ask a silly question. It may be a silly question. It may be a stupid question. It may be a question that's easy to answer, but I always treat it as a serious question because that's the only way they learn. That's the only way I learn. And I want them to feel like they can ask those kind of questions and not be ridiculed. And so no question is stupid in my mind. And every question that they ask helps make them a better employee. And, sometimes when they ask the questions, I may not know the answer. I may have to learn myself about it. So it puts us both on a learning journey. Be yourself. I think this is easier as you get older, but I think you need to start thinking about it at your age. Be yourself. You got to be comfortable in your own skin. And sometimes that means at your age, not following along with the crowd. If everybody's doing maybe some mischievous things, and in the back of your mind, you think, maybe I shouldn't be doing that, but you do it anyway to go along with the crowd, that's when you start to need to exercise a little independence. And independence as a person and independence in your thinking. And not get caught up in groupthink and say, well, the other 4 or 5 boys are going to do this. Maybe they want to spray paint the school. Maybe they want to break a window. Maybe they want to put nails under somebody's tires. Those are bad things. And those are bad things. But maybe you feel because you're in a group, well, we got to do this. It'll all be funny and nobody will know it's us. But you know what? You got to have a little independence to not do that. So be thinking of those things not to do and be yourself. It's okay. And you don't have to be all that outspoken about it. Just say, no, I don't think I'm going to join in that. Thank you guys anyway, and walk away. And just take yourself out of it so that you're not caught up in it. Because if you get caught, then you're going to say, why didn't I do that? Why didn't I stop myself from doing this prank that I knew was only going to get us in trouble? So exercise a little independence, exercise your own individuality by doing the right thing and not getting in trouble. And the last thing before I open it up for questions is don't be afraid to make mistakes. Nobody wants to make mistakes. You are afraid to make mistakes, but you need to go ahead anyway with the way you're thinking and try it. And there's very few mistakes that are going to hurt you that much. In fact, you grow from making mistakes. I've heard people say politicians who run for an office that they've learned more from that one loss that they had than they've learned in all the victories they've had. And that could be true in a baseball game or a football game or a tennis match or gymnastics or whatever. You try to make that one play or make that one move, and it was a mistake to do, but you learn from it. You won't make that move again. You may modify your actions so that you're more successful. So don't be afraid to make mistakes. And when you're a leader of a group, allow your people to make mistakes without getting in trouble for it. Now, there's some things in my office, if it's illegal or it's unethical, those are mistakes I can't ignore. But if it's mistakes where they're just trying to do right and it just turned out not well, I always tell them, just get up, dust yourself off, and let's try it again. You learned a valuable lesson here. In my office, I don't count how many wins and losses my attorneys have in cases. I know there's some that do that. I don't do that. As long as I feel comfortable that in every case that lawyer is learning to be a better lawyer. The wins will come over time, but they need to know that they can make a mistake, eliminate that mistake from their professional portfolio, and then just carry on. They'll become better lawyers over time. And I haven't thrown them away early. I mean, it's not in my interest to get rid of somebody who's made a mistake or two if I can mold them and make them a better lawyer, make them a better person over time. We all make mistakes. I made mistakes that I'm not proud of when I was in junior high and high school and later on. But you know what? Society and my parents and my friends allowed me to make those mistakes without hurting me. So you've heard that old phrase, don't throw the baby out with the dishwater. Same kind of thing here, you'll make mistakes, but don't be too hard on yourself, but don't be afraid to try again. And anybody around you who is smart and wise will allow you to make those mistakes without hurting you permanently. So that's kind of an overview of some of my thoughts on how you can be a better person and how that will lead you into being a better employee for people someday.
I think I just to recap some of what you said, you started with honesty, that being really the number one thing that you think will help students on their journeys, not just in their careers, but also in their personal lives, right? Honesty, hard work, the value of not expecting to come into a situation and then immediately have get a promotion without working hard or getting not acknowledged or noticed. You will need to put in the work. You will need to work hard in your life. Additionally, you talked about listening. And I think that ties into what you said when you said, make sure that when you speak, it commands attention. So that, when you are providing your insight, which is of course valuable, when you're providing your feedback, make sure it's done in a way that is received well, and that so that people can hear it. So there's not so much noise. You get to the real point of what you need to talk about. Teamwork. You talked about being a great team player. And don't be afraid to make mistakes. That, of course, was important. Be independent and think for yourself. And that's especially important so that you don't end up in your office or with a trial against you for mistakes that you have made. And that lesson you learned about honesty is so important because people show their character. And once you show your character, it's really hard to change people's perception of who you are.
Absolutely. If I could
Yeah.
just dive in there, that is absolutely a good point. And it's whether it's fair or not, first impressions stick. And it may not be fair, but frankly, when you're meeting people for the first time, if some character flaw comes out like dishonesty, it is very, very difficult to overcome.
Hard to build that trust back. But we did have a question that was sent in advance from Ariel, and she wants to know specifically to the legal field and to your career, what are the risks when a case fails? There is so much at stake for you and your work and people's lives. And she's asking, what are the risks of a case failing?
That's an interesting question, Ariel. I'm gonna do it in two ways in terms of civil cases and criminal cases. So if I'm prosecuting a case because I think they've committed a criminal act, and for one reason or another we can't prove that case, and so a jury comes back and acquits the individual, the downside for us is, have we let the family and the victims down? Because I wouldn't have charged the case if I didn't believe the individual had committed the crime and caused the harm. And so on occasion that is something that we have to deal with where we haven't been able to prove the case, but we just don't forget it and walk out the door in the family. In many of I try and train my attorneys that we have to deal with the family and talk to them. That gets back to the first thing I said, and deal with them honestly and just say, we tried, but honestly, this witness wasn't as good as what we had hoped, or that evidence that the police department had wasn't as good as what we thought it would be, and it didn't impress a jury. And you have to tell them that when we go forward, that there's always the possibility of failure. And hopefully you have, and my attorneys have talked to the family and the victim's family before we go in there with some of these risks. At the end of the trial, if we've succeeded, we say, we were able to prevail. The jury believed our witness and our evidence, and we were able to vindicate you. But on the other hand, and we've had this in some emotional cases too, say, I'm sorry, we tried our best. We got all our motions in, we got everything in, but it wasn't persuasive to a jury. And all you can do is be as honest as you can with them and as open with them as you can. That's not going to take away the hurt and the pain from that family. But nevertheless, they at least feel like they had an honest broker with you. On the civil side of things, which I used to deal with in private practice, but not so much now, it's not about somebody going to jail or not. It's about money. It's about whether people should be compensated for their losses or not. But some of the same dynamic still is in play. In fact, I've heard some people more worried about their money than whether they go to jail or not. But, the same thing kind of applies there as to whether you were able to prove your case or not and whether things came through. You just have to prepare your client in a somewhat of a different way because it deals with their pocketbook as opposed to somebody spending time behind jail. But again, the same dynamic is there. You have to talk to people. You have to be open with them. You have to let them know what the risks are on both sides. So I don't know that there's a pat answer for you on a formula that works in terms of failure of a case, but I do think how you handle that and how you handle your client or our victims remains the same. And it's what I talked about before. It's honesty, making sure you listen to them and you understand what their concerns are, making sure you answer them honestly, work as hard as you can on that case so they never suspect that you didn't give it your best. Ask them questions and be yourself. If they think you're up there trying to play Perry Mason or something else, that's phony. They need to know that you are who you are and they know that you tried. If you made a mistake, fess up to it. Say, I forgot to ask that question. Or maybe we should have put that witness on that, but we didn't for these reasons. You have to have a rationale as to why you approach the case, because if you could have one case and 30 lawyers and you'll have 30 approaches to that case because they all see a difference. So practicing the law is more of an art than a science. Right. So some ways of going forward might work, others may not. But if you've made a mistake, again, just fess up to it. And as painful as that can be, you have to be honest with the folks and tell them, I tried my best, I tried my hardest. It just didn't work out.
Absolutely. I think you're speaking to the human element as well. And something else that I hear in your advice for students, when you talk about the families and the impact. So when you are in a room, when you are making choices, when you make decisions, you're not just representing yourself, you are representing you're representing your family, you're representing your friends. You really need to think about how they will be impacted by your choices and your decisions as well.
Yeah, well, and that's a good point to make. As district attorney for the 10th Judicial District, that is Pueblo County. The 10th Judicial District and Pueblo County is one and the same. That's 170,000 people. So you're absolutely, I have to talk to people sometimes and say, I know you want the case done this way, but I don't think that's in the best interest of the people of Pueblo County. Yeah. So I, of course, what a victim says is very important. We put a high premium on it, but it's not their case. They may have been the one assaulted. They may have been the one that had their house broken into, but it is not their case. It's my case. And I have to do what I think is in the best interest of all 170,000 people. Now, hopefully most of the time what they want, what I want is the same, but it has differed from time to time. And I have to say, I know you want me to do this, but I'm going to pursue it this way. And again, I have to be able to stand up to them, look them in the eye, and honestly say, this is what I'm going to do.
Absolutely. Well, we want to thank you for providing your insight, your perspective, and sharing more about your story with students. And I think you're an excellent resource for those who are interested in going into the legal career. I'll just tell you honestly, that's when being a lawyer was something when I was a kid. It was top of my list. I wanted to be an attorney. And then things shifted somewhere in middle school when I realized how much hard work you did and how much school you went to. I realized, man, that's a really hard career track and career path to go into. But I have so much respect for your career field, and certainly do we appreciate you and appreciate your time and you sharing your story with students. So thank you so much for your time today. And students, thank you for tuning in and for having this experience to learn a little bit more about those keys to success at work, which are not even things you could put on your resume, but things that will come across in the way you carry yourself in your interview as well. Being that honesty, hard work, being a good listener, being a great teammate, being independent, thinking for yourself. These are life skills that you can take with you and will certainly help you in your future. So we're grateful for your time.
My pleasure. Thanks so much, Angie. Glad to be with you, and we'll do it again.
Thank you.